Welcome to the Infinite Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Louisa Haworth, and I help high-level entrepreneurs and leaders unlock the codes of sustainable success through energetic mastery, wealth consciousness, and aligned strategy. Here, we go beyond mindset. We go into the quantum, the subconscious, the soul, the energetics, so that you can create a business and life that's prosperous, powerful, deeply fulfilling, and create the legacy that you came here to make. If you're ready to expand into your next level with more ease, alignment, and flow, then I would love to invite you to our free energetics experience, The Energetic Edge. This is where we dive into the hidden energetic patterns that hold high achievers back and activate the frequency that's required to go beyond your current ceiling. You can join us at louisahavers.com/energetics, and we'll pop the link in the show notes for you as well. Alrighty, now let's dive into today's episode. A huge welcome. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to our conversation this week. I have the phenomenal Dr. Meg Haworth with me, and we're going to be talking about how toxic and narcissistic parents can affect your business and your bottom line. A huge welcome, Meg.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, I can't wait. And for those of you that are new to Meg's world, Meg is a transpersonal psychologist, holistic chef, and best-selling author. Meg helps wounded adult children of narcissistic parents become healed or icons, independent, confident, original, and naturally you in her iconic Me therapeutic coaching program. Oh, this sounds fantastic. Meg also offers online courses, is the host of the Toxic Parent Recovery Summit, has an ever-growing YouTube channel, and teaches on faculty with the Shift Network. She is the creator of whole person integration technique, a somatic emotional release process that brings healing the body to help heal the abuse and illness connection holistically. Oh, this is just incredible what you do. Thank you for your work. This is phenomenal. Huge welcome. I would love to, let's start with a fairly meaty question then for you, Meg. How does narcissistic abuse as a child adversely affect a person, if we think of it, from in business and particularly when it comes to money?
Yeah, so the programming that comes from a narcissistic parent really comes from the angle of controlling the children. And the narcissistic parent sees their children as an extension of themselves, so they don't see them as sovereign individuals. And when you are in business, particularly having your own business, it's all about sovereignty and being the individual and trailblazing, doing your own thing. And that can be very difficult because your identity, your self-esteem, your self-expression, your self-worth, your self-trust, huge, all these things that are really necessary in business um, really get challenged. And one of the big things that we're programmed to believe is that we're not good enough and we never get it right. And so we can become perfectionists who are so hard on ourselves that we work against ourselves and make it much harder to be prosperous in our businesses because we have this sort of hold on, white knuckling kind of energy. And that's one of the things that we need to learn to release when we go through this. And a key factor with the money situation is that a lot of times narcissistic parents, narcissistic mates, narcissists in general, they use money and finances as a way to control people. And so then you've got this weird relationship with money, and you may not even know it. You might have all these limiting beliefs in the interior and the subconscious mind, and thus the body, that you're running on and you don't even realize. Or you may realize it and you're just like, gosh, I can't seem to get past this wall of beliefs that tell me I never make enough, I'm not good enough. So you see that parallel between that messaging of not good enough and not enough money. So it really can get in there and be very difficult to run a business and I have struggled with this myself. So I'm coming from that angle.
This is so huge, and there's so much to dive into here. I'm just making a note around the male-female dynamic, but I'd love to, before we explore that, because I know you have a fairly dramatic personal story of how you got into this work of helping people heal holistically. I would love to hear more about that because you just sort of touched on your experience there.
Yeah. I mean, so basically what happened for me is I was raised by a narcissistic parent.
Mhm.
I was sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. I drowned as a child, I had to be revived. Many years later, in my 40s, I was struck by lightning. Yeah, so I've
Wow,
had all of
Meg.
these tragedies.
So,
And most recently, dodging the fires in Los Angeles. So there's, a lot of things come up in life in general.
Mhm.
But, the things that I went through and all the abuse that I went through as a child, I was sick through most of my childhood. And by the time I got to my 20s, there were times where I would be bedridden for weeks at a time. And I was on all these different pharmaceutical drugs, and I was just getting worse and worse and worse. And there was a moment where, and I had illnesses like I had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, I had irritable bowel syndrome, gastritis, ulcers, migraine headaches, depression, severe depression. That I was told, was like chronic depression that,
Mhm.
and the word chronic was used all the time. So
So
chronic means
more
always it's
programming.
going to be a problem, more programming. You're
Yeah.
right. Exactly. It's more programming. And we're susceptible when we were raised by toxic parents. And I would just say, just briefly, toxic parents are emotionally immature parents who don't know how to fully show up for their children
Mhm.
because they don't even know how to fully show up for themselves. So they're just like stumbling through life, whether they're an alcoholic or any other kind of addiction, um, or any other kind of mental illness as well. There's a lot of different ways of looking at that. But back to the story. But I was
Yeah.
starting to say that what happened in my 20s, because I was in and out of doctor's offices for almost a decade, getting
Mhm.
sicker and sicker, is I had this moment where I'm from DC originally, Washington, DC, and I was reading the Washingtonian magazine. There was this article on alternative medicine. And I was reading about chiropractic care, and I could barely hold up the magazine because I have scoliosis in my upper back. It's curved, it's twisted, and it's really informed the rest of the body.
Mm.
Um, and so it clicked with me because I was thinking, oh, that'd be so great for my then boyfriend. And the chiropractor would be great because he's got lower back issues. And then boom, it clicked. Like, wait a minute. I can't hold up this magazine. I'm almost in tears. I'm in so much pain. I'm sometimes in bed for weeks at a time on muscle relaxers and painkillers and all of these things. You need to get help. And so this thing happened, my intuition kicked in big time, which was always really strong. But this is another thing that narcissistic parents divide us from, because the more you listen to your inner voice and your intuition, the less the less easy it is for them to control you. And that's always
Absolutely.
their primary goal, is
Mm.
to control you, no matter what your age is,
Mm.
all through life. So there's a lot of things you have to deal with there. But yeah, so that was like my big turning point where I just started listening to my intuition really strongly, and listen to call your friend who was just raving about her chiropractor. And then I started going to her, and just like I made that decision, like I'm gonna heal this. And along the way I discovered, of course, nutrition. That was one of the first things. But I also discovered that after I got so much better getting the gluten and the dairy and the sugar and all of that stuff, and this is 30 years ago, before this was even a thing. you know
You were pioneering.
Yes, I was definitely pioneering. So after I got all that stuff out, I still had high anxiety and really bad depression. And so I started to dive into mind body medicine and, what's going on with my body and my mind connection. And then, oh, the abuse is connected to that. Oh, okay. Emotions have that much of an impact on the body. And that's where I just really took off with my work, was really looking at how your emotional experience, particularly the negative emotions, affect your body, but also how the positive ones do. And why is it that we can't get into the positive feeling when we're so bogged down into the emotional, when we're bogged down in anxiety and depression and fear and sadness and helplessness. Helplessness is a key thing I see with my clients who've been narcissistically abused. So anyway, so that's sort of like the nutshell of the backstory of these things that happened. Yeah.
And an incredible, well, as you say, it's dramatic story, in terms of all those aspects that have happened to you, and how they were then showing up in your body. And I'm sure our listeners who've had narcissistic parents will be nodding along and recognizing, and this is for those that have recognized they have a narcissistic parent. I think there's a turning point, isn't there, where people may start to question, like, what is going on with my parents, but not have the language to recognize that this is actually narcissism. From what you've seen, would you see, is there a tendency for people to have a narcissistic father over a narcissistic mother? Or are there any differences in terms of the impact of how narcissism can manifest through the male and female line?
Yeah. Yeah, the differences in impact, there are differences because just the roles that mothers play versus the roles that fathers play. And then the contact, especially if you have a mother who stayed at home with you who's narcissistic, and the constant contact with that and the constant programming. So that can be incredibly difficult to work around, to work through. But the thing about the narcissistic father, and something that happens a lot in those families, is it's sort of like they're the cult leader, the king of the family. And that's really, I mean, that's really what narcissistic family systems are, a lot like little cults, and that you have to focus on that narcissistic parent. So the male, if he's the king of the family and he's, these are all of his rules and you must follow them all the time, the other parent, whether, no matter what their condition, they may be narcissistic too, is going to carry out those rules, because the consequences for that parent, behind closed doors, is far worse in some ways, because there's also that romantic and sexual element that's added to it. So it's intense for them. So they may feel like, well, this is the only thing I can do, is to carry out these directives, because, uh, again, the consequences are just horrible. And I think so many people don't believe, and even therapists who don't really understand what this is about, they'll say, well, you should try to forgive, or you should go talk to them and tell and set your boundaries. And none of those things work with narcissists, whether it's your parent, your mate, your boss. None of those things work.
No,
So
it's so true. I have my own experience of narcissism with a parent, and also the father of my children developed narcissistic tendencies. So I hear you on this. And that piece around the boundaries, they don't respect it, in relation to how perhaps someone else may expect it. And I loved how you just reminded us all around the wounding that that narcissistic person has as well. So this isn't around recognize. I think this is it's important to recognize that and to have that compassion without saying, yeah, that's okay to treat me like that. We need to have those boundaries, but it certainly is a journey for people to go on. And I would love to explore more of this with you in terms of, because you talked about how the day in, day out impact of the abuse for family members who are growing up in an environment where one or both parents may be narcissistic. And I know you have developed your own technique in relation to getting to the emotional root cause of illness and pain in the body. I love talking about this kind of stuff. So tell us more about that. I would love to hear more about
yeah.
this.
Yeah, so the technique is called whole person integration technique, and it's an emotional release therapeutic technique that's gentle. A lot of emotional release techniques I've seen or even experienced myself can be very jarring.
Mm.
I mean, there were ones where it would take me 2 weeks to recover from one session, and this is not like that at all. It's much more gentle. So basically what we're doing is we're working with the emotions themselves. And, because uh, uh, narcissistic abuse, toxic parents, they use emotions as weapons.
Mm.
So they're using shame and guilt. Now, narcissism is a shame-driven disorder. And so they're using that shame and that guilt to keep you in place, but they're also they're projecting their own shame and guilt that they refuse to touch and making it yours. So then they're blame shifting constantly. So you're the problem. No matter what they do, you're still the problem. And that programming too is just really hard to get past, because then you do that in your business as well, just to kind of weave that in,
Yes.
where, I'm the problem, I messed up, people aren't coming because of me, or whatever it is that's happening inside of your business. Um, so at any rate, yeah, so the emotions, those emotions like shame, guilt, fear, anger, rage. Narcissists use rage to control the people around them all the time.
Mm.
Just outbursts. You never know when they're going to do it. And it's going to be so difficult to endure that you're just always hyper vigilant and walking on eggshells, trying to keep yourself safe. But there's no safety in that kind of parenting. So all these different emotions, they're using them as weapons. But then there's your reaction to the emotions. So now you've got this double duty thing going on, where you've got your reaction, which is rightfully anger and rage, hatred towards your narcissistic parent. That's something that I think we all feel at some point or another when they do horrible things, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you're just blown away by how ruthless they can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at any rate, the emotions that you have, plus the emotions you're taking on, especially if you're empathic and sensitive and intuitive. So you're taking on those emotions so if you think about what that does to the body over time, because you're being drained constantly, your energy system, and thus your body is being drained by these thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. They become lodged in the system, and they're, all over the body. And then we get sick. Hello, we get sick.
Yes.
And so what this technique does, whole person integration technique, helps you to look at the emotion itself. What does it think, feel, and believe? It gets you into the role of observer. So you're not caught up in the center of your story, but you're watching the story of the emotion itself. And the emotions want exactly what you want. They want to be seen, heard, understood, loved, and released from their pain. And then as you do all of those things, which the technique helps you do, you're able to get to a place where you're just like, you know what, I'm ready to let that energy go. They let the energy go, but we don't just let it go, we also replace the energy, because we want to embody peace, love, kindness, compassion, caring, all of the wonderful qualities that are the essence of our souls. That's the essence of who we really are. But we get completely disconnected from that when we're raised in this kind of environment.
I love what you said around that aspect of taking on other people's energy and emotions. And it's certainly something I see with my clients as well, where people can be feeling these emotions. And then when you start to strip it away through beautiful techniques like you've been mentioning, to suddenly realize that that emotion wasn't even yours to begin with, is quite something to the impact of that on someone's life and business is huge. To be able to realize you've been carrying shame, guilt, fear, rage, and it's not even yours, but
Not
you've
even
taken
yours.
the responsibility of sort of holding it for however many years for a parent is massive.
And you're programmed to believe that it's your responsibility, because that
Yes.
parent makes you responsible for their emotional states.
Yes.
You
And
know?
that's a huge burden for a child growing up in an environment, particularly when you're walking on eggshells and you're trying to navigate Like, is it a good day? Is it a bad day? What's going to be going on?
Yeah.
And certainly, one of the things that I've seen, I would love to, if your reflections on this, is that narcissists can be very charismatic, life and soul of the party in front of everybody, but then when the doors are shut, completely different people on one level, because it's almost like a mask has come down with their family members. Is that something that resonates from your perspective as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And really, the truth about them, and this is really hard to wrap your head around when it's your own parent, is that person that you're seeing behind closed doors, that's how they are. That's how they think. That's how they are, because they're not introspective, so they're not going to shift and change. Um, and so this whole mask that they create for the outer world is a false mask to get what they want, because everything about what they do is manipulation. So it's manipulation tactics that's their game. And there are dozens of them that they use. And it's really interesting because across the board, um, those tactics, and I'm saying, internationally, this is something that we see over and over and over again. So,
What are some of the tactics for, I was just thinking of the people that maybe, I think my parents are narcissist in that stage, so that they can start to recognize them and have some language to describe it. One of the things that's coming to mind is anywhere they may be like gaslighting. So gaslighting being where they're saying something happened in one way and it didn't happen in that way. But of course, their energy is so strong that you then start to doubt yourself and trust your own intuition. And so it just completely wipes that away.
yeah. Gaslighting is a good one, manipulation tactic that's used regularly, and it is designed to make you doubt your reality because that keeps you in a weakened state. It keeps you questioning, like, oh wait, was I the problem? Oh, did I do that thing that he just said I did do, or the thing that he is saying that, or she is saying that um never happened in the first place. It's really insidious. That one's a very difficult thing. It's not just lying, and lying is the lifeblood of a narcissist. I mean, they're often lying. Some of the other tactics are things like blame shifting, where everything's your fault. It's they're not going to take responsibility. They never take accountability for their own actions, or how they affect you, and that's because they don't have empathy. And that's one of the scariest things about them. Um, so there's so many tactics they use on an everyday basis that keep you in a state of confusion. And that's one of the primary places they want you in, because that makes it harder for you to leave, because you're constantly questioning, like, wait a minute, I did that. I'm the problem. And you end up apologizing for things you never did because of all of the different tactics that they're using. Um, so gosh, there's just so many things that they do. It's just awful, and it's constant. The scapegoating that they do, which again is the blaming piece, the shaming, the guilting, um, and again, it's constant, and the criticism. And this is key when it comes to business too, is that when you're constantly criticized by your own parent, it makes you doubt your own ability. And so you lack confidence typically. And it may be really hard for you to be visible, because it was easier for you to like hide in the shadows as much as you possibly could. And if you were the invisible child in your family, like visibility is a really weird thing. It's
Yeah.
a lot to overcome for you. So
Yes, because if
yeah.
visibility is not safe, and in business, we need to be visible, of course, don't we, to be able to
Yeah.
make the impact that we came here to make. And you've got that energetic um, interference going on in your consciousness, because you're having that internal battle of, I need to be more visible, but it's not safe to be visible. And then whatever in a dialogue that's been programmed into you by your mother or your father, that's very energetically draining when you're trying to go about your business to, lead and to, make the impact that you came here to make. So there's so much that I can see as you're sharing the, you know, the things around the gaslighting and how that might impact in terms of someone as a business owner, how many decisions do we need to make in a day? But if we're having to take longer to make those decisions because of the impact of the gaslighting on us, and we're in sort of that constant recovery around it, that must have I can see it having a huge impact on someone's bottom line in terms of the flow in their business, whichever aspect or tactic that they are recovering from, and from just to echo what you've said, that this huge range of tactics that they use are going to have an impact across all aspects of your health and your business.
Yeah.
You mentioned around lack, it has a huge impact on lack of confidence. How does that, from your experience in terms of show up in for people in terms of their business?
Yeah, the lack of confidence is huge because putting yourself out there, especially when you are a solopreneur and, it's your intellectual property and all of that, there could be a lot of things that you need to overcome in order to be able to do that. And you might actually even feel disconnected from the things that you do put out there because you don't know how they're being received. You're afraid of the criticism. People write things in the comments and then it just destroys you. So learning how to stop taking things so personally, which is a key thing that helps you heal, that helps to build confidence. And then reminding yourself, I think this is really important. I see this all the time with clients, is reminding yourself of what you did do instead of focusing on what you didn't do or how badly you did it, or, you're going to make mistakes in business. That's just part of business. You just have to keep trying, keep throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, that's just part of it. But it can be really tough to hang in there and keep doing that. Keep trying new things, keep trying different marketing, keep trying a different niche or whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. It can be really hard to do that and you brought up something that's really important here, is the decision-making ability. Because you can be so much in that confused state that your parent programmed you to be in, that you just sit in that freeze mode, unable to make a decision. And your nervous system is just like, no matter how hard you try to push forward, you're just dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with fear, and you're dealing with pretty much exactly how you reacted to your parent while you were growing up. You got triggered and now you're sitting. Because you're just like, there's no place for me to go. I can't work this out with anybody. I can't talk to anybody about it. Nobody's going to understand the silencing aspect. What happens, the center of self-expression and communication here in the fifth center of the human energy system is a lot. And when you're trying to access your center of self-expression to be the person that you were meant to be a leader, to create your business and all of that, that can be very, very difficult. So building confidence is a really important part of that and of business. And a lot of that has to do with just you keep going. You adopt that whatever it takes attitude. That's really important. It's hard. It's hard when you've got all this programming that you're trying to slice through,
Yeah, quite. I think, business is challenging enough without having to bring in the dynamics of programming from a narcissistic parent that's going to have left you feeling wounded and, holding on to those, being able to then move to feeling more empowered and confident. I believe that everybody needs help with this because everyone has blind spots around this. And of course, the subconscious has an intention of having 100% success rate on delivering its programming. And so we need someone like yourself to be able to guide ourselves through healing those emotions and the wounds so that we can have that impact in business. And, to, like with your story, Meg, to be able to move through and heal the illness that has shown up in life, because of course that's going to have a big impact on business as well, family life, all aspects of life, if we're chronically unwell. I would love to know from your perspective, Lynn, what advice do you have for any business owner who perhaps might be struggling with a chronic illness and is in that space of that, they feel like they can't seem to get well?
Oh, yes. Number one is take your healing into your own hands. And start to learn to listen to your intuition. And if you need help with that, doing some intuitive development courses. I mean, I offer one, it's for coaches, therapists, and healers because I get certified also in whole person integration technique. But there are a lot of people out there who have some great advice to help you get in touch with that part of the self. Meditation, really important, really important. The studies on meditation that were chronic conditions and symptoms have released. They're just gone doing the meditations. So that's medicine right there. That's
Beautiful.
anybody can
Yeah.
do anywhere. It's not easy when you have all of the mind chatter and you have all of the ruminating. So take a course in it. I think that's really important, is to learn how to do it and do it with other people because that group energy helps a lot. But yeah, taking your healing into your own hands, learning to listen to your intuition. When you make a decision, I think this is key with anything when it comes to healing. When you make a full on decision that you're going to do whatever it takes, commit with your entire mental, emotional, physical, and energetic and spiritual selves, like your whole self, everything changes. Everything changes for you. Everything you need just starts coming your way because you've said, yes, I'm doing this thing no matter what it takes. I'm going to heal myself. Um, and I'm going to, these things are just going to start coming your way. It's amazing how that happens every single time you make a big decision. And it doesn't even have to be a big decision. It can be a small decision. Like that day that I picked up the phone and called my friend and said, I need the number of your chiropractor. That
Mm.
seemed like a small decision at the time, but it was huge. It changed my whole life.
In the same way, it's like a sliding doors moment, isn't it? You were thinking of your
Yes.
boyfriend, and then you were like, no, actually, I need this for myself.
Yeah.
And what a different path that could have turned out to be if you'd allowed the programming to carry on running at that moment, but you had that like insight, higher wisdom
Yeah.
coming down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And nowadays there's so many things available to us for our healing that you really had to dig for 30 years ago,
That's a
you
very
know?
good point. I think there's been a real boom with people desiring to have that sovereignty and to take it into their own hands in relation to making that decision around I'm going to get better and exploring things beyond the programming of, oh, you need to have, whatever big pharma is pumping out at that moment in time,
Yeah.
to be able to go, actually, I'm going to do it this way and go get to the root and look at it holistically. I just think the more and more people that can find out about this kind of work, the better, because this is where the true healing lies for sure. I was looking at your website and I loved around there was a quote on your website. I think you said, the truth is the body always remembers what you're trying to forget. And I just wanted to highlight that because I just think that's such a powerful phrase because you can't get away from your body. And so that mind body connection is everything, and being able to, through the work that you're doing to help people to heal the impact of their experiences of narcissistic parents is just life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I want to say a little bit more about the body always remembers what you're trying to forget. And I think a lot of people don't know about the concept of the body mind. And it has a mind of its own, and it's directly connected, if not the subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind is in every cell of your body. It's not just something that's sort of out there. But the body holds the keys. It
Mm.
has all of the keys for your healing. And on every level, chemically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. Um, and that the emotions, I think, are key too, because those emotions have the impact to hurt us or to heal us. You know?
That's powerful. Emotions have the ability to hurt us or heal us. So true. So true. And you mentioned around the emotions of, you know, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the rage, that control. And the thing is of course, that when we've been experiencing those emotions so often, it can become our default set point, and we don't even know why, and the body gets addicted to those emotions as well. Which I'd like some peace, please, in my life. And then you can find yourself going, hang on a second, I'm in this same scenario again, and now I'm getting to experience fear, guilt, rage again, and I just need to get off this roller coaster.
Yeah, it really is a roller coaster, and you get so, you know, emotional addiction, bringing that up. I mean, that's a really important piece of what we're talking about here. You do get addicted to or accustomed to, because the word addiction is just really implies there's something horribly wrong with you, you know? But you do get accustomed to it, and it becomes that default, and so you feel like you are on the hamster wheel or roller coaster, but you can step off the ride. And that's like good to know. You can step off that ride. And it's not something that happens just like that. The programming didn't happen overnight, it happened over many years. But with techniques, somatic therapeutic techniques, there's so many techniques out there that and everything works. You just have to find what works for you, you know. But there's a lot out there to help you heal that mind body soul connection, you know.
It's so important, so important. And I know you've got our listeners an incredible freebie. Would you like to share a little bit about that freebie so that they can download it, and then where you hang out, and so they can come and step into your world?
Yeah. So there's a few things on my website, but I'm going to focus on 52 ways to tell if your parent is a narcissist. It's a checklist, and then there's, you know, more information about that in the checklist. But I think it's important that even if you're just like, I know my parent's a narcissist, to go and look at the list, because it'll help remind you. This is one of the mind games that we do with ourselves. It's like, well, it wasn't that bad, especially when they're being nice and they're so charming and they have this wonderful side, and you're just like, wow, oh, they're so great, you know. But they're talk about being put on a roller coaster ride, you know, between the dopamine hit of, oh wow, they said something nice to me, to the roller coaster downward spiral of the horrifying criticisms they lay upon you, and then the cortisol that you know starts moving in your body. Um, yeah, so 52 ways to tell if your parent is a narcissist is there on my website, free checklist. There's also the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study quiz, which I also recommend you taking, because that is the largest public health study ever done. Copycat studies have been done all over the world, but it was done in San Diego, California at Kaiser Permanente. And what they found was an indelible connection between what happened to you as a child and how your body is responding physically to illness later on in life. So yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff on there for you guys.
Huge, absolutely huge, incredible resources. Thank you so much. And where do you hang out, Meg? Are you on social media at all? Where can people come and find you?
My favorite platform is YouTube. I have a really good YouTube channel that keeps growing, and there's probably about 400 videos on there now. To help you through narcissistic abuse, particularly parental narcissistic abuse. But a lot of people will say, well, but is it going to help me with, you know, my mate as a narcissist, you know, or I think they may be. Yeah, absolutely, because it's the same things across the board. It's just a different relationship. So, but they still use the same manipulation tactics. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook fan, LinkedIn, you know, all of the usual suspects, and TikTok.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming to share your wisdom with our listeners today. I really, really appreciate it, Meg.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome. It's wonderful to meet you, and to be in your energy, and to really learn too from you, and you know, I could tell you've been through it as well. So it's a helpful conversation for a lot of people.
I hope so. I hope so. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our listeners who have been tuning in. Do come and find myself and Meg on social media, and please do share this episode with anybody you think that it would serve. We would truly appreciate that. Until next time, sending you all lots and lots of love. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Infinite Prosperity Podcast. I hope it's left you feeling inspired, expanded, empowered to embody your next level of success. And I would love to invite you to join me for the Energetic Edge. This is my free energetics experience for entrepreneurs and leaders who are ready to master the frequency of their next level. You'll discover how to identify and shift the subtle energetic blocks interfering with your capacity for more income, impact, and expansion. You can join us at louisahavers.com/energetics or via the link in the show notes. And I'll see you there. Here's to your next level, and I'll see you in the next episode.